Good evening. Welcome to the July 7th meeting of the Mount Vernon City School District Board of Education. District Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, come on. Trustee White. Trustee White.
Present, I'm here.
Trustee McOwen. Trustee Patterson.
Present.
Trustee Mitchell.
Present.
Trustee Turnquist.
Present.
Trustee Red.
Present.
Trustee Crump.
Present.
Trustee Saunders. Trustee Saunders, I see her. And Trustee Miller.
Present.
A quorum is present, ma'am.
Do we have any communications from the public?
We do. We have one communication this evening from Linda Richard, Outreach Specialist for the Health Home Care Management Program and HCBS Peer Specialist. The Guidance Center of Westchester's Center for College and Careers presents a free summertime training for Mount Vernon High School students in web design and development. It will take place on July 20th, 2020 to August 7th, 2020 from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Thursday via Zoom, and students will learn basic coding skills, the history of the internet. They'll gain knowledge to design their own websites. They'll have an introduction to advertising and marketing via websites. They will collaborate in small groups to maximize social skills, and more certificates will be issued upon the completion of the training. For more information, students are encouraged to contact Ms. Barrett at 914-413-9310, or they may email her at dbarrett, B-A-R-R-E-T, at theguidancecenter.org. That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Dr. Hamilton, do you have a report?
I do. Thank you very much. So good evening, all. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank the board for their incredible support with accomplishing the successful attainment of the 2020 vision as we close out the 1920-2020 school year and we begin the new year and launch the beginning of our new planning for the 2020 and beyond goals. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome trustees Turnquist and Red and returning trustee Brenda L. Crump. And while this year is certain to be a complex one, I have no fears or trepidation because I have the full confidence in this board and administration that we will successfully navigate whatever lies ahead. And with that in mind, we have been working on a reopening plan. And Dr. Gorman and I are going to present that plan to you this evening as part of the Superintendents Report. Let me just say that there are a lot of unanswered questions. You're going to have questions that we don't have answers to. And this plan is going to likely be amended as executive orders come through that give us further guidance and directions about what we need to do. There are also some budgetary implications that we have to carefully look at. I'm going to be sharing with you several attachments and appendices for you to reference this weekend when I send home the weekly that will be referenced in this reopening plan. But there are several features to this plan that we want to share with you. First and foremost, we consulted with several plans across the country to see what other districts were looking at and what their reopening plans might look like. At the end of the day, because there is still so much uncertainty and we are seeing cases begin to increase across the country and in our region in particular, and this isn't even anticipating a second outbreak, which we were initially told we should anticipate in the fall. So we're presenting this plan based on what we know and understand today. And just as you hear this plan, do understand that it is likely to change. But we want to be able to put something out there, one, so that our parents know that we're working on it. And secondly, to the extent that parents may have some concerns or trepidations or fears about sending their kids back in September, to know that we are working to address what some of those concerns may be, and hopefully gnaw away at the number of parents who are very concerned about being able to send their kids back. So, Dr. Gorman, you want to share your screen?
Of course. Thank you and good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, good evening. Dr. Hamilton charged the district with putting together a reopening advisory council. Currently, myself and Dr. Bennett Conroy are co-chairing that committee, and this is an ongoing effort that will continue right through the end of the summer and quite honestly through the year. So on the reopening advisory council, is myself and Dr. Bennett Conroy. There are principals, teachers, central office members, security representatives, buildings and grounds representatives, nurses, parents, and students. Some of the people that I just mentioned are not active yet. There will be other subcommittees that continue to really grind down to the fine-tuned bits of everything. But tonight we wanted to give you an overview of what the world is going to look like in September, the way we envision it. The governor has asked all school districts in New York, as of yesterday, to submit a plan, and by July 15th. So that is our plan. This is the beginning of our plan to do that. And what he's going to do is take all of the school districts in New York, review those plans, and then New York is going to put out their guidance for the reopening of schools in September. Many states have already done that before. Some are in the progress, and it's all scattered throughout the United States. We've accessed plans from California to Missouri to Georgia to Illinois to the capital region in New York to New Jersey. Just came out with a 104-page document. Kentucky, onward and onward. We have documents. If you look at my desk, it's filled with best practice documents. And so we are using all those resources to cross-reference. So we don't have to make things up, but we do have to do what's right for our children in Mount Vernon. And so our plan does speak to our successes from last year and builds off of our community at large. Go ahead, Ken.
I serve on the Commissioner's Task Force for reopening schools. So some of the data that you will see in this plan is information that I've gotten from the workshops and sessions on the Commissioner's Task Force. And that task force is comprised of union leaders, regents, superintendents, board members, students, teachers, and parents on the Commissioner's Task Force. So the subcommittee that I'm on specifically is on teaching and learning. And so you will see some of the items that we have recommended in our state plan incorporated in this plan.
And just so you know, Dr. Hamilton and myself are very active nationally through AASA. We are a part of a digital consortium and a transformational leadership network. And so I currently attend meetings every other week with 40 of some of the best superintendents throughout the United States of America. In addition, because of what's been going on, we've been staying in front of things, and I wanted to get an idea of how the county is doing, how Westchester is doing. So I am with the Curriculum Council through the lower RIC regularly, and I'm always getting feedback on what they're doing and how we're matching up and how we're comparing and how our plans look compared to theirs, etc. So reimagining Mount Vernon City education schools in September is based on 3 guiding principles. The first principle is the health and safety of staff and students is our top priority. As this process unfolds, additional guidance from state officials and health professionals will dictate revisions to this plan. And we realized as we went through March through June that social emotional learning and mental wellness is very important for children, families, and community members. It's a very emotional time of quarantine, of loss. And if we don't acknowledge that and address it with our students, it's really hard to just shift and say, okay, I'm ready to learn when all these things are going on in people's lives in our community. So there's a three-pronged approach to this plan, and there are three options that we are going to present, and based off of what is going on with the current state of events with the COVID-19 virus will be how we respond and what our learning and teaching will look like. So across the top of the slide you see is called the magnitude of the virus, the instructional model that goes with the magnitude, and our response. So the first one is if there's a very high substantial spread of the virus, we will go back to a platform of distance and digital learning. Now, it's not going to look exactly like it looked from March to June last year. It's going to be much more comprehensive, and I'll go into the finer educational details of that in a couple of minutes. So we would be back in a distance learning environment. We would have either targeted closures, we would be isolating and disinfecting affected areas based on the spread of the virus, whether there are hot pockets in certain schools or the whole district or different parts of our district. We would either have short-term closures or extended closures. So that would be in red, and that's sort of a stop. And so the colors in this slide are indicative of stop, a yellow light and green light and go. So the next one, and you see the star by it, is a minimal to moderate spread of the virus. I believe that's sort of where we are now, even though New York is doing an incredible job right now at this moment in dealing with the virus. That would be a hybrid model, and we'll discuss what the hybrid model looks like. But basically a hybrid means part distance learning and part face-to-face learning. And it's really, a lot of it is based on capacity of students in our building and abiding by social distancing norms and safety and health of staff and students. And this would be a limited staggered use of school buildings, alternate scheduling. There's a lot of different alternate types of schedule going on. One of the appendices that Dr. Hamilton referred to you will talk about the different models and, half days, AB days, 2 days on, et cetera, et cetera. And it says in that one appendix that no matter what type of staggered start you have, you're going to run into the crossroad of what do parents and staff members do for childcare of kids that are basically under 13 years old. And so there is a natural conflict. And when you start seeing the magnitude of this plan, you realize how many details there are. We have hundreds and hundreds of guiding questions on the topics that we're going to show you tonight. We're just going to give you an overview, and then the details will continue to flush out as we go through the summertime. And then, of course, if there's low or no spread of the virus or other details dictate, we will drop back into a traditional model. But when I say traditional, sometimes traditional refers to something that was, embraced and a tradition. That's not what we really mean. The traditional model of teaching and learning of a teacher teaching to a class of students is not what we consider good or great, the best type of academic learning activities. We learned a lot from March to June, and we were able to roll out technologies and learning and goals and videos and project-based activities that we have not had the chance to do because of, quite honestly, a lot of people are just obsessed with test scores and they're afraid to take risks. So we really had a great opportunity from March to June to take risks, to try different learning activities, to really have successes based off of all of our digital resources. And then, of course, our school buildings would be open and we would still practice preventive practices and additional proactive protocols. And I asked Michael and Dr. BC here with the parents to talk about and be part of this presentation to talk about all of the preventive measures that we'll take.
At the state level on the task force, we came up with a series of recommendations to make to the regions. Among them is another proposal to suspend standardized testing another year, to look at lifting, to petition the governor to look at lifting the number of day requirements, for example, so that if we go with an A/B model, that students would not be disenfranchised, or districts would not be penalized, districts like Mount Vernon in particular, and to also talk about funding and how we might be able to stabilize funding for districts that have such diverse needs like Mount Vernon in regards to our homeless population, our students with disabilities population, and the number free and reduced that live within our borders. So some of those recommendations, should the Board of Regents accept those recommendations, and if the governor also makes certain provisions, that would also dictate some changes in this plan. But I will tell you that across the state, most, if not all, schools are going to be looking at a hybrid model.
Absolutely. So we start with the educational plan because, and it's funny because of all the different plans we saw, some start with safety, some start with different areas, but we wanted to give you the educational backdrop first. And then based off of that platform, we'll show you how we could make all the other accommodations to what we're doing. So we're going to touch on just a few of these topics here. The educational plan, the instructional plan, technology access, which is incredibly important when you talk about equity and the digital divide that has plagued our community, and we're hoping to really close that come September. We're really excited about the possibilities. Professional learning and teaching, it's really important that we continuously educate our staff members, our parents, our students on all the basics. The professional development is ongoing, and quite honestly, that was one of our accolades from March to June. We did not stop professionally developing people, whether it was video conferencing, to using educational tools, to getting onto Schoology. We continuously, every day, there were workshops going on for teachers, hour workshops, half-hour workshops, 2.5-day workshops. It was nonstop, and it was very well received. And I think teachers felt comfortable and started to, feel safe in the digital environment, which was very new to a lot of them. Okay, so here's the executive summary that really guides our thinking here. From March 2020 to June 2020, and we are currently in a virtual summer school as well. For Mount Vernon City School District has provided us with many insights on what the future of teaching and learning will look like in the fall of 2020 amid the virus. The following learning plan overview will drive how we can adjust to any external stimulus that impacts the students, families, and community of the Mount Vernon City School District. So in other words, no matter what happens based on our plan, we're confident that we could flex to a traditional learning plan, a hybrid, or a full distance learning. So we are very flexible no matter what happens with the virus. The backdrop is to create weekly units of learning for our students where we are flipping the content. So when you talk about an educational term called flipping a flipped classroom, is where students receive the content, what they're supposed to learn at home, and then they make sense of it in school. So we've seen that in this day of YouTube and video content and discovery and all the resources and visions, HMH, Pearson, Lesson B is a new health curriculum, Learning A to Z, Raz Kids. We have so much educational content at our fingertips, and we can deliver that to the children virtually and through our learning management system with Schoology. But what is different about this plan is that in the spring last year, we were more reactive, like what comes next, because we were just hanging on to and learning with this new protocol. What we plan here is to have a weekly unit of study or a 2-week unit of study where kids will know what's coming up, what kind of activities they'll be learning on their own, with partners, with classes and small groups, and what type of projects they'll be receiving. Synchronous and asynchronous instruction are two big terms that are often put out there. Our plan is to identify next generation learning standards because we want to make sure that our kids are getting the right information and that we're closing the learning gaps. And we're going to introduce things at a higher level in Mount Vernon. Understanding by design is a backward design. It's something that Dr. Hamilton and I dove in head first in New Jersey in our former lives. And we were very successful with a backward planning for educational content. It was ASCD and Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe and Carol Tomlinson on differentiated instruction. So this is a planning practice that is a best practice, and we believe that it fits perfectly for where we want to go with our kids. Instructional preferences will be based on students' readiness levels, so we'll be using benchmarks and assessments ongoing regularly. We anticipating using a hybrid model of face-to-face and distance learning to reduce the risk of exposure to COVID-19. Parent training modules for navigating online learning will begin in early August. So we are ready to go. And Dr. Hamilton mentioned that we're going to have to flex on some of our budgeting based on this plan. What does this mean to get PPE in the district, to do professional development in the summer for possibly the teachers, for parents, and other resources that we hadn't necessarily counted on as we went through our budgeting cycle in January and February and March.
One of the things that I'm really pushing, even at the state level, is parent training. And talking to parents, I am consistently hearing how they just don't know how to navigate Schoology or how to provide home instruction for students. And even parents who may really want to exercise that as an option, who have the flexibility to do so in terms of time or work schedules, they may not necessarily have the capacity in terms of knowing how to navigate it. So I've really been pushing the state, and I'm going to really push for us to recognize how important it is for us to train our parents on how to access Schoology, how to access different modules, how to get a hold of resources if they need to supplement something that kids don't understand, what online resources are available for them if they need to augment instruction or to monitor and adjust, so that we close the gap. And while this will be an additional task for the district and the state to take on, I think in the end, it benefits our kids.
Excellent. And we actually put a lot of those resources together, but we have to do a really good job on communicating it. So communication is part of the plan. And we have communication forums and templates and methods, but we really want to be able to reach everyone. That's where the Office of School Improvement does an incredible job with the parent liaisons as well. So our hybrid model proposing now, this is a backdrop and we'll adjust accordingly. So let me just go through it and then I'll explain what I mean with the adjustments. So half of our students will come to our schools on Mondays and Tuesdays. So it'll be 2 days in a row. Our standard will be 10 to 12 students per classroom, depending on the size of the rooms. Teachers will work with students to understand the content that they provide for them through the weekly units of study. Teachers and staff will physically come to school every day according to the school calendar. Wednesday will be a planning day where teachers and administrators will create the weekly plan for the next week. We will plan district-wide by grade level. Staff will also reach out to students on those days and families through video conferencing and other methods to ensure that students are participating and engaging with the content that is being created. That was one of the lessons that we learned, is that while we know that some kids participated and signed into Schoology, we weren't sure to what level. And so we know that we have to monitor and we have to go out and we got to get our kids and we got to drag them to the table sometimes and we got to hold them accountable. And one of the big pieces at the end of the year is that we spent a week of reaching out and touching kids. So when a teacher touches a kid, even by video conferencing, it's special. They're making connections, and those connections inspire kids to do more learning and do better in school and to be more successful. So again, that social emotional component is incredibly important. We are teaching our children here and our kids, and that's a very important concept as opposed to just teaching content. The other half of our students will come to school on Thursdays and Fridays. So the reason why we did this split is because on Wednesdays, what we plan to do is disinfect all of our schools. And without children there, Michael and his team will be able to do that in a really efficient form. So if we have some of our schools with an outbreak, we'll be able to disinfect everything on after Tuesday when the teachers are in the building only. And so that helps us stay ahead of the safety protocols to keep all of our schools in really good shape. And I know most of the board knows that we're really on the front end. Michael will talk about it, about cleaning and using those power machines and really being on the front end of disinfecting. And even, our central office is spotless and immaculate, and Michael and his team have done an incredible job throughout the last 6 months. We are currently exploring physical education virtually. This is, I'm starting to gain some momentum on this concept that physical education, by connecting it possibly with guidance and doing virtual physical education or exercises and teachers reaching out, phys ed teachers reaching out to kids to hit the gym curriculum, that will provide a space. And we're at dire needs for space because a couple of things that are going to be in play. They talk about isolation rooms. It's a must have. You must have an isolation room or a space if kids can contract the virus. So where do you put kids if this happens? Or staff members or parents or anybody for that matter. And also we are, the next slide, we'll talk about our technology plan. We need space for technology, for repairing technology, for housing technology, and some of those spaces might also allow us to expand classrooms or make additional classrooms in some of our schools as well.
And we are also looking at yoga as an option for some of our students, as well as looking at opportunities for what art and music will look like in a virtual environment for our students, particularly the performing arts. Like how can we provide options for our students that give them the appropriate training, expertise, and exposure so that they can really explore their artistic endeavors in a virtual environment. This will also require us to have some serious conversations with our teachers' unions and negotiate some non-negotiables. When we talk about a synchronized environment, we have to really be clear about those expectations and what that means so that there is parity across the district with every school and every student and every teacher so that everyone is getting the same amount of time in accordance with this plan.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to talk about it in a minute, but I just wanted to point out that, and I mentioned a minute ago, that there is flexibility within this plan. So while this is a shell, the specifics, so the high schools might operate differently than the K-8 schools or the little people and our pre-K students. And there'll be a big emphasis on literacy and numeracy. So within the day, that teachers are spending the 2 days with kids, we have to make sure that kids know how to read. So we might have to say within that day, even though your schedule says other classes, we might have to stay longer periods of time on numeracy and literacy to make sure that we're not widening the gap and that kids really understand how to read, how to make sense of things, and how to grasp mathematical concepts as well. So there will be flexibility within that. I've had a couple of conversations already with high school principals on possibly different grade levels coming in on different days, moving teachers versus kids, having one-way hallways versus kids in moving about. And so we want to minimize space. And so these sub plans, the next, after we submit our plan on the 15th, the work really is going to continue the entire summer to drill down to the specifics and the operating procedures at each grade level or school level or grade band. Okay, so our model is flexible for the following reasons. So option A that I gave you back with the red, yellow, and the green. So if the virus was full spread, what we just explained to you now, we'd be fine because we'd have full distance learning. We'd have the units are still created. Instead of face-to-face instructions, teacher would use video conferencing for asynchronous or synchronous instruction. So even though kids might not be right in front of us, we would still expect them to be reaching out to those kids on Monday and Tuesday in their distance learning piece. And again, we have to work out the details of this, and that is the next level of work. Option B, the minimal or moderate spread of the virus. If a school has an outbreak, it may close for a period of time. Students in that school would still be receiving full distance learning and synchronous instruction from their teachers. If the school is open, then social distancing and modeling of best safety practices are the standard, as half of the students come in on Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday. And option C, the low or no spread, the units of study will still be utilized because the benefits of technology tools, skills that students must possess. One of the things that we've learned in the last couple of years, especially at the STEAM Academy, is that kids didn't necessarily know how to use computers. We may have assumed that they did, but a lot of them, they were receiving their first computer ever in life, and just turning it on and logging in and checking email, which us as adults think is a common practice, is not necessarily a common practice for people that have not had access to technology for a part of their life. At the superintendent of schools' discretion, you want to read this one, Ken?
Follows may be suspended at any time based on the changing nature of existing conditions of the pandemic and/or the governor's executive order.
Okay. So in other words, all good, but if things change, Dr. Hamilton will say, we're changing. Okay, so access to technology. Here's some very exciting information. All pre-K to 1 students and specific special education students will receive iPads and have access to our academic softball content for little people. Some of them are Waterford. We piloted Seesaw, which is a digital portfolio. It's a great tool. Wixie is a content delivery of videos and interactions of different content areas, and really good stuff is really exciting, and it's really good stuff. I was actually on the website the other day. By utilizing all of our existing laptops that we already have in the district, donations from the Mount Vernon Education Foundation, grant funds for technology, and our reorganization of the 2021 IPA, we will be able to provide a device for every student in the district. And we are so proud if we are able to pull this off, because we are going to take Mount Vernon to a 1-to-1 and close that digital divide. One of the lessons that we found last year was that even though there was a computer in the house, everybody didn't have access to it. And I know, some of our Board of Education parents complain that there's no isolated time. Kids need their computer, and they need to be alone so they can dedicate their time and effort to their device and doing their work at times. And we found that that was one of the barriers to our community, is that there may have been a device in every house, but access to that, or quiet access to that, did not occur. We're looking at a plan to provide internet access for students that do not currently have access. Mr. McGrath and I, Dr. Hamilton, we want to have a conversation actually this week about working possibly with the town to get better broadband for a lot of the parts of the community. We think it's doable, and we do have a shell of a plan to make that happen. We do give away hotspots based off of our resources as well. So it's okay to have a computer, but you need access to the internet as well. And we're not sure if we have that. One of the things we'll be talking about is a survey that we'll be putting out to parents and families very soon, and students, on what their needs are and how we can help meet them. Students will be able to access the unit of study created by our teachers through Schoology. And again, we talked about a flipped classroom, all of our great educational tools and more. Actually, I was been in talk with Lesson B, which is a health curriculum, a video health curriculum that was used in actually New York City, and they've really expanded. And the owner of the company lives in Mount Vernon. And she's great. And we talked about how exciting it would be to showcase Mount Vernon. They have a social, emotional, mental wellness whole unit, and their resources are plentiful. We'll bring the education committee, the newly developed education committee, up to speed on some of the new resources that we're seeing through the different technologies. And when teachers do interact with students, as I said, I knew it was there, the focus will be on literacy and numeracy, reinforcing and make sure that students understand what they have been exposed to online. So we talked about professional development, and it's going to be ongoing. And this is another area where we might have to reallocate some fundings, but topics that we are going to discuss this year and really drill home with our staff and our parents and the students, training on health and safety protocols. So you can't assume that people know how to social distance and how to wash their hands and how to be safe out in the environment. We are very cognizant of not making assumptions. So we want to make sure, similar to some of the conversations we had tonight, that we are making sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to do. How to access Schoology that Dr. Hamilton mentioned, how to effectively video conference. So even though you're on a Zoom, right? You know, what are the different aspects and the etiquette and the norms of Zoom? What are the privacy issues along with video conferencing? We've come a long way from March. We have forms that students and families have to sign off on. We have norms and lighting, you know, seeing people when you video conference. Classroom management has taken on a whole nother level of work. It's different, but it's very similar in a lot of different ways. How to email and communicate with teachers, that's a very important piece. How to access report cards and interim progress reports, which we did digitally this year for the first time, and we thought we were very successful. How to use a computer and an iPad. Social media, we would like every teacher and student to have a Twitter account and some form of educational social media. There's so much education and there's so much good that can come from social media if used in the correct way, and people are educated on how to use social media effectively for learning. Creating units of study through UBD and DI based off of standards when I spoke to, and then some of our new technologies which are changing, and that's the beauty of it. We do have to stay in compliance with Ed2D laws, so that's very important as well. But some of the ones that we had just dabbled with were Flipgrid, OneNote, Padlet, Quizlet, Edpuzzle. A lot of them have been around for a long time, but now anytime you get to share and create content, that's a really important part of learning for children. And most importantly, our summer administrators workshop. Dr. Hamilton, you want to talk on our racial equity training and some of the conversations we've been having at Cabinet?
We've had some extraordinary work. We've done some extraordinary work with Chris Emden, who is renowned on racial diversity and equity and inclusion. And we are going to continue those conversations. So even before this whole outbreak in terms of where we are as a nation hit the surface, we were already having these conversations because it is important for us to really look at our curriculum, the delivery of our curriculum, and how we develop a culturally sensitive curriculum in a manner that isn't isolated to 1 month out of the year, but infused throughout the curriculum, throughout the school year. And that has to start with having conversations and training with our teachers and our principals around this topic. So we can't assume that teachers know how to have conversations with students about race, and we've experienced that. You know, I had a conversation with a group of students, and teachers were trying to talk to them about what was going on in the country, but some of them didn't have the tools, didn't have the resources to access to have grade level and age appropriate conversations. And so we have to ramp up our training so that our teachers are equipped with what they need in order to be able to effectively have that conversation.
Very good. So as I said, we could be here for another 4 hours, but we're going to talk to you, and I'm going to bring Michael in, Michael Policio in for a couple of minutes to just talk about part 2, which is practicing prevention, social distancing, wearing masks, taking temperature, sanitizing, cleaning. And he's not going to touch on all these topics, and he's going to just give you an overview. One of the things that I had mentioned before was arrival and dismissal procedures, right? Taking temperature of kids, allowing them into buildings, where do kids go if they're sick, entering school buildings, using appointments, building procedures, transitioning. The next component was meals and transportation, outbreaks in the school, communication practices. There is in protecting vulnerable populations, that is something that is coming up regularly in our discussions. What do you do if somebody is in a vulnerable position medically and they're being exposed to people that may have the virus? So Michael, are you ready for us?
I think so, Dr. Gorman. Thank you so much. I'm just going to touch on a couple of things, a minute or two, just to emphasize the enormity of this task, this multi-department evolution that we've been embarked on here. You know, it involves security, transportation, health services, food, building administrators, B&G, mail service, you name it. Every department has a moving part in this. If you look at just the first one, social distancing and wearing masks, think of how that has, you know, steered our lives in the last 3 months or 4 months or 5 months now. And now we're going to add another component to that. We're going to bring people inside a building and still have to maintain those safeguards. So we talk about social distancing, we break it into 2 categories. We talk about common areas and classrooms. So the common areas, the corridors, the entrances, the bathrooms, and we have a system in place now, and we're using the Ed Center as kind of our guiding model to see how these evolutions actually work. But the classrooms, they present a particular problem that is even something that another thing that we haven't examined yet in operational practicality. So the classrooms, we're using classroom distancing strategies. Who would have thought that the B&G guys would be using equilateral triangles to maintain distance from the teacher's desk to the final student? But there's a drastic reduction in the amount of people that can be in those rooms and still maintain distance. Face coverings, you know, PPE in general. If we have to supply face coverings for 7,600 students and 2,000 staff members, is that 1 million masks at the end of the year? You know, these things are just unprecedented in what we're trying to do here. And, you know, we take this challenge head on, and we're ready for this challenge. We have, like Dr. Gorman alluded to several times, we're going to have some funding shifts, and, you know, the buck stops at Dr. Hamilton, so we're going to do him proud, and we're going to have a robust disinfecting program. The governor says all the time, disinfecting the subways. Who would have thought of that? So the same thing applies to the schools. We clean the schools, and now we have to disinfect them. And I know Dr. Gorman had said we're going to do them on Wednesdays, but we're going to do them every day. We're going to do wiping and sanitizing during the week, and we're going to do during Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Wednesday we're going to do bigger disinfecting with electrostatic machines. And so we're ready. And transportation is another issue, and we've been in constant contact with the bus companies and with private transportation people that we can figure out how to best keep our children safe. The prime directive, as he stated earlier in the presentation, is health and safety. And that's what we're all about here. And so we look forward to the challenge, and I know we'll succeed at it as we've done so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Good. And then some next steps, other important topics. How do we function like we've done from March to June with the business office and our fiscal plan? How do we deal, as Dr. Hamilton had mentioned, about collecting taxes in this environment? Large social gatherings, which I think we've done an incredible job with our graduation services, but there are others throughout the year. Extended learning care for our first responders. That sounds like that will continue to be part of who we are as schools.
One of the things they want to look at, frankly, is designating our teachers as first responders, because we have some teachers whose own children may not be in school, and that may limit their ability to be able to come to work on a regular basis and attend in a synchronized environment. So we may want to explore what that would look like for some of our employees to provide them with that kind of care for their children to free them up. So it's really changing what education looks like, how we function. Some districts are looking at how they can really extend the remote work so that folks can work from home. So they allow social distancing in their central offices, for example, and in their business complexes. So like what we know school and education to be is changed forever. And we will continue to adapt as new information and new research evolves and informs and directs our planning.
Very good. So lastly, a couple of things. Dr. Hamilton referenced an appendix. We wanted to give you some real things to dig into over the weekend, to look at. We have some great forms and protocols that I mentioned that we've taken the best of the best from at least 10 to 15 different states, and some really good referencing. One of the last ones is a classroom logistics assessment that actually Michael did a study on how desks should be placed in classrooms, abiding by social distancing concerns. And we want to let you know that we are definitely ready for the challenge, and we will continue to drill down. So we have standard operating procedures, and we're ready to go as school reopens. And then lastly, we wanted to give you just a reopening timeline as we move forward for the rest of the summer. So I mentioned at the top of the presentation that on July 15th, the governor is looking for schools to submit their plan. That will be what we are doing for the next 7 days. And we will be meeting with members of the subcommittees to really get their input, because we don't want to just do things for the sake of doing things. We have to listen to what our committee and our community says. So it's important that we hear and get that input. After July 15th, we'll be waiting for guidance from New York State Department of Education, but we'll also be determining our fiscal needs that accommodate safety, professional development, learning needs for students and staff. That is something that will be a barrier, and is a barrier. If you're listening to the news today, they're talking about, yes, we want all kids back in school in September, but how do you do that in a safe environment? The subcommittees will continue to work from August 1st to August 31st, and quite honestly throughout the school year. And we will start off strong with convocation and reopening. One of the things we talked about with our technology deployment, we want to give the kids their devices in school. That was one of the barriers from March to June, is that we had to do a pickup, and then we didn't really get to in-service and professionally develop kids to show them how to turn it on. Joe and his team have done an incredible job of getting kids to get a one sign-in for all programs. And we have to do software updates because, now that everyone's in a digital environment more, there's more hackers and there's more bad things going on with ransomware and all types of viruses, technology viruses. So we have to make sure our devices are up to date, up to standard, and are continually updated to meet the needs of our educational system. We want to start in September with baseline assessments to see where kids are, because we don't want a one size fit all. We know there are learning gaps that have occurred, and we have to grab where they are, and we have to start planning accordingly for each of our children. And then lastly, we're going to make those flexible adjustments as the year goes on, and we will adjust and based on the spread of the virus and what is going on in our nation. And that is sort of our presentation to you, to give you an overview of what we plan and what we are actively working on.
That's exhausting just to look at the presentation, Dr. Foreman.
I know.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the work that you've done recently, but all the work that you did building up to March 13th or 17th or whenever we shut down, because we were so far ahead of other school districts, and super affluent, much smaller districts with less logistical problems, with greater access to internet and devices and things. So I just want to say you've done an amazing job, our leadership. I'm so proud of what we've done. And I totally believe that this new way of learning that we've been using, obviously with Avid and in some of your classrooms and stuff, is really going to provide the equity in learning instruction that we all are striving for. So I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I guess we just all have to remember to stay incredibly flexible, because if you don't like it, wait a minute. Micah?
Yeah, I just want to second that. I think it's a great presentation. Thank you for putting it together. Two specific things. Thank you. I feel like it's very honest with the community about where we're at, like what we are thinking, but also the unknowns. And there are a lot of unknowns. So I appreciate that you list out the unknowns, because they are there. And some of them we might not know until the day before school starts. And some of them might be different from building to building. So thank you for putting that together. And also thank you for the second thing was for the timeline. Because I feel like it's really good for me as a parent to have an idea, okay, between now and Labor Day, like what should I be expecting to hear and when, more details. Because I mean, I've been waiting for 3 months to know what's gonna happen in September, which everybody is. Every day I spend all day reading the news about what other school districts are doing. And it's not my job. So I know you've been doing it more than I have been. I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. And I know if you don't have the answer, that's okay. But my biggest question is families with multiple kids in the school district. How is that going to work? Is everybody gonna be, if you have 3 kids in the district in different grades, are they all gonna be Monday, Tuesday? Or are they all gonna be Thursday, Friday? Or maybe you don't know yet. That was my big number 1 question. My big number 2 question is opting out, whether it's voluntary or whether maybe there's a family with some severe health concerns and real vulnerability, and maybe it's too risky for them to send their kids to school at all. How would you address that concern? And again, if you don't know the answer yet, then you don't know yet, but those are my big questions.
And one of the first documents that we'll provide you over the weekend is an FAQ from California. And what regularly keeps on coming up is what happens, what accommodations do we do for teachers and for students that have family members that are at risk? And how do we meet those needs? So if we have a teacher that has a medical condition, what happens to her class? And so we do not have concrete answers, but it is a common question. The first question, a common concern. The first question you mentioned about families, multiple school districts, that's where we got to dig in and get the subcommittees. We got to work with our principals, with our administrators, with our parents, with our students. We got to get to the logistics of when are we bringing kids in and how are we going to bring kids in. And like you said, there's comfort in that. As overwhelming as it is, once you start diving in and just chunking it, it sort of falls into place. So even today's presentation, all the documents didn't really start with the educational plan, but we figured if we had the educational plan, then we could do the rest. And so just organizing it, and I mentioned backward design. This is what it is. It's a backward design, and we're going to get to all those details. And we're not going to be perfect, like you said, but we're going to adjust, and we're going to do everything we can to meet the needs. Will everybody be happy? Of course not. But we're going to do, we're going to really give our best effort to give kids what they need in this environment.
Trustee Patterson.
Okay.
Trustee Patterson, you had a question?
Vice President Saunders can go first. My question can wait.
You muted, Adrian. Trustee Saunders, I'm sorry.
I had to unmute myself. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. No. So if they go to school, will there still be after-school programs as well? If on the days that they go to school, will they have after-school programs, or will there be after-school programs and the digital learning during the day? Is that an option?
One of the things we're looking at is extracurricular and after-school supports for students. And because the funding source could be different. So there may be funding sources that we could access through Title I that would allow us to provide extended services for students in a supplemental after-school program. We have to see how those funds are going to trickle down as a result of, because that's generated at the federal level. And my understanding is that there is supposed to be this stimulus package related to federal funding that would allow school districts to supplement their instructional programs because of the impact that COVID has had. That's part of how we were able to expand our summer school program. We're anticipating that those funds will also be available in the fall, and we'll be able to augment that. I want to go back to Trustee McOwen's question in terms of families with multiple children. I think we're going to have to understand that there may be some policy issues that we have to address in terms of customizing educational plans for families that have multiple children. But we won't be able to have a generic plan that fits everybody. But there may be specific cases that we have to look at where maybe parents have more options to when they go to school, what schools are available to them that fits the schedule in terms of what grades come on which days. So we're going to have to look at policy implications as well, even if it's a temporary policy, to provide greater flexibility for some of our families.
And then also the surveys that we're going, that K12 Insights, which Dr. BC uses with our DTSDE and school improvement. They are putting together a similar survey to the one that New York City had just put out that actually I could include that in Appendix also. That will help our decision making in the next month and through the year as well.
So I guess for me, and especially since I have a child in the district and I have dealt with the, the long distance learning through the few months, and then I also signed my son up for summer school because that poor kid got a teacher for the last 3 months who was not so good, as I've said before. I was really concerned about him, falling behind. And what I'm seeing in the summer school is fantastic because it's much more involved, it's engaging, and of course it's a smaller group, so I get that it's much easier. And I'll be honest with you, it's a lot harder for me because I can't sit there and I can't move it around my schedule for work because, well, at 9 o'clock it starts and he needs to be sitting there at 9 o'clock, and inevitably like 3 kids talk at the same time and he's like, hey, do you hear this? And I'm like, could you pay attention to what you're doing, please, and stop and don't involve me. So I guess I'm very interested in what like that other 2 days would look like for the kids, and what they'd be doing on the 2 days that they'd be home theoretically with their parents, in terms of like, are we looking at, I don't know, Waterford and iReady and a mix of things that don't involve the teacher, but they can follow up with us later, let's say on Wednesday, to discuss what the kid does. Or are we looking at, I don't know, what are we looking at? Because
so what I can do for you, I'm sorry for cutting you off. What we could, I get giddy over some of this stuff. We've already created a 2-week unit as a model. I could share that with you, and I have a video that one of our interns already put together. It would be a combination of more project-based learning. Teachers could do a screencast, give them directions. They could participate in discussions. They could use different technologies. They could use iReady like you talked about. They could watch the video and the avatar for envisions. They could work in small groups. They could work on different projects. It's going to be a combination of more doing because, think about the amount of what a traditional classroom looks like. The teacher delivers something and then the kids basically do it. It's not, the teacher shouldn't be talking for 40 minutes and the kids do nothing. They should be doing. And so we hope that they're doing and they're consuming the content like we mentioned before, and then they're making sense of it by doing different activities that make sense of it when they receive the content. So the other day I had a conversation with Michael, and it was, I was asked for feedback, and he said, I don't understand this. He goes, if I want to learn how to do something around the house, I watch a YouTube video, but then I can't necessarily do it right away. And so that's the purpose of the face-to-face or the synchronous, to say, Mike, let me explain this piece on the video where I showed you how to do this, what really has to happen, what you really need to do to express yourself to get to the next level. So we're hopeful that the time with the teacher and the student is very to make meaning of things, to answer questions, to deeper dive. And when they're alone, not necessarily alone, but when they're in with different groups or partnering up and doing projects. And I'd mentioned, not all of you were able to see because in the new trustees, but that project with the Michigan teacher, that was an exemplar. Those kids were working and doing projects. They were creating studio boards. They were creating advertisements. They were doing interviews. They were doing research papers. They were writing paragraphs. They were doing all the things that you would do and more through these great technology tools. So it's a yes and And one other thing that I wanted to mention, so it won't be as much hit or miss as you had mentioned possibly, because through our planning, and this is some of the preliminary conversations I've had with the union, we don't expect everybody to be an expert in understanding by design and differentiated instruction and how to create a unit plan. We anticipate anxiety and failing forward and working through this. But we believe that we have enough experts that we could create a unit, and for the people that don't get it necessarily, we'll give it to them. And then we'll help them figure it out. So it's not going to be as the variables won't be as extreme. Part of what we're doing is trying to cut down the variables to deliver a third grade education in every school to every kid that's somewhat consistent, but also allowing teachers to have autonomy to explore and to expand it and to use their creativity along with their kids.
Yeah, I think as a parent and as somebody, again, who has, I'll tell you the amount of work I've gotten done over the last 2 days has been a lot less than I've gotten done, because again, I can manage, if I give, my son Waterford, I know for half an hour, he's stationary.
Yeah.
So that buys me a half hour that I can do work. And I know the concern is going to be, and, and people have heard, I don't know, there was an article that came out regarding New York City, and they said that they did the numbers with square footage, again, very raw numbers, but square footage versus social distancing space. And they said that every kid was going to be in the classroom every 3 days, because that's how they were going to have to rotate the kids in. Again, that was, an article that was based entirely not on anybody's official answer. But when that came out, people started saying, listen, and it was other parents started saying, listen, we need to, I don't know if we can sustain this and still work. So my only point is, if there was a way to, again, load like that, let's say my son's in Monday and Tuesday, if we could load Thursdays and Fridays with, projects, things that I can give him and say, here, sit and do it. Rather than me having to like log him into Zoom every, theoretically it was supposed to be every 30 or 40 minutes for the summer school. And, he can't log into Zoom himself. And then, it's difficult as a parent. I get you guys have difficulties too, but.
No, we get it. And we're exactly what you described is yes. And we know that effective instruction is not being on a Zoom call and me talking to you for an hour. That's not effective instruction, no matter what. And then going to another class and having another teacher, that would not be what we would call a best practice in digital learning. So just because you're synchronous doesn't mean that it's this synchronization right here. And that's why we tried to give the PD committee an overview of all the different tools that we have. It could be really even more engaging, but we want kids to read. We want kids to write. We want them to watch videos. We want them to talk to each other. We want them to do things. Super shout out to Dr. BC and Joe McGrath on pulling this summer school together so quickly. And the impact that we're seeing right away. We were up and running at a really high level, and my hands didn't touch that a lot as well. So I'm hearing great things, and I just wanted to give them both a shout out. We had to do specific schedules for every school, recreate schedules, and the resources that they've put together and the communication has been impressive. And you sort of seconded that here today, unsolicited.
Great.
Oh no, it's fantastic. I think he's gotten in those 2 days, what he's gotten from me the whole rest of the 3 months. Like, it's fantastic.
Awesome.
I can't say enough good things about it.
That's great.
I have a question.
Yes.
So did the governor give any kind of indication as to when he is going to give the final as to what's going to happen?
No, he has not. There's some discrepancy in terms of the governor's authority and the commissioner's authority in terms of who makes that call. The governor insists that he has that authority, and since he controls the money, that's probably where the authority rests. But we have not gotten guidance yet on what that executive order will look like. And quite frankly, it's probably going to really depend on what the flow of cases are in this region. And Westchester County could be on a different cycle than New York City, for example.
Right. So the last question is in regards to the models. I heard Jeff talk about the models in the different states and things of that nature that that you've been looking at, but nobody have experienced this yet. And individuals who have already went back to school who have experienced this is China. So have there been any communications with them to see what they have done?
Actually, I started a chat with a principal. I had the opportunity to do some studying in China several years ago, so I stay in touch with one of the principals there. And I actually spoke with him over the weekend, over what was supposed to be my vacation. And we chatted a little bit. One of the things that they are doing is they are putting kids on a modified schedule, but they also have them in these little isolated booths, like a cubicle. And the teacher—
like a pod when you're in first class, right?
Exactly. And that's how they're working around it. And it's kind of, kids are adjusting pretty easily to it there, but there's a cultural difference in China about things being very regimented. And I don't know that we would be as successful here. And they were already wearing masks in most of their schools in China, even before the outbreak.
Thank you.
That's one principle versus, looking at a whole region, which I'm hoping he'll connect me with.
Jeff, I had a question, maybe a couple things. First, I know you mentioned Wi-Fi, and that I think you mentioned that we're trying to contact and communicate with our Wi-Fi providers, because a lot of what we're hearing from the public is that the Wi-Fi companies, the services that have been offered for free, like from Spectrum and the such, are now beginning to say that they're getting ready to shut down the free Wi-Fi service and start charging. And I hope I'm not rehashing something that you covered, but can you elaborate on what we'll be able to offer to families and what we're working on in that event that actually happens? And then I have one more thing after that.
Yep. So I'm going to ask Joe to come in, and Joe and I, we try to connect as much as we can. And it's sometimes every day during the week, and sometimes it's every couple of days, depending on how busy he is. So I'm putting him on the spot right now, and he's going to give you a feel for our conversation. Our last conversation talked about zones within the town of Mount Vernon and expanding the network so houses could receive a Wi-Fi from a central zone. Joe, you ready for this?
Joe,
Sure, absolutely.
Joe, could you just introduce yourself to the new trustees, please?
Sure. Welcome, everybody. I'm Joe McGrath. I'm the technology administrator for the district. Very nice to meet you all. Just in very short strokes, we're looking at ways that we can possibly find, and it's going to have to be a creative approach. So one approach that some school districts have taken is with hotspots. The problem with hotspots is they're very limited to cell service. So if you don't have good cell service, a hotspot isn't a good location for you. Another thing that we're looking at, and this is still very preliminary, but this is an idea that technically will work, but we'd have to speak to and work with the city and the mayor and figure out if this is something that they would be.
You went on mute, Joe.
Oh, we lost you for a second. You're muted. Joe.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
We would like to use the school buildings and basically expand Wi-Fi from the school buildings, and basically every 3/4 of a block you put in a repeater, a radio, which would tie into the city's electric, and you could go about 2 long or 4 short blocks from each in any direction from the school, and basically create sort of mesh fields where you can expand around schools and provide Wi-Fi to those people that live within that radius. So if we do that and we build that and the city supports that, we would be able to concentrate and provide, and not just spotty Wi-Fi, but good Wi-Fi that would actually support video conferencing, which is, it's not just about having Wi-Fi, it's about having quality Wi-Fi, and that's important. But you don't want that to be the obstacle.
We should also look at how we might be able to partner with the library, public library. I know they are looking at purchasing hotspots. We may be able to be part of a larger consortium and get some hotspots that way may augment where that service may not reach.
In addition, we also have a partnership with Sprint for about 80 hotspots that they will be giving us in the fall. So we'll be able to give those out to about 80 high school students, specifically as the nature of their program. So those are just some of the things that we're working on. It's preliminary, but I agree. We need to 100% address the Wi-Fi need. We can't assume that it's out there. We know that it's something for us to look at. So these are just some of the ideas, and we're looking at technically how to pull that off.
And quite honestly, we're looking at the federal government as well. I mean, it's a long shot, but if they're saying do this, and you know, the Gates Foundation is involved and reimagining education, and they're talking about this, they have to be open to closing that digital divide. And that's what some of the new grants are talking about, specifically about closing that digital divide, which is very real for us.
Trustee McCohen, I know you had a question.
Two things. Listen, I'm all for closing the digital divide, but I also want to be realistic, and there should not be, I don't think, any expectation from the community that we're going to be the source of everybody's Netflix Wi-Fi permanently for the whole city of Mount Vernon. That is not going to happen. If we can find a way to, you know, to partner with somebody to provide Wi-Fi for everybody, that's great. But I don't see us having the budget to build repeater towers around the city. I just don't see that happening.
Well, we certainly can't do it in time either.
Yeah, I mean, it's not happening by September.
But I guess we have to be patient.
Don't stop paying your cell phone bills if you already have Wi-Fi, please. The second thing is totally unrelated. Are we looking for the campuses that have good outdoor space, for Graham, for the Turner campus, for Trapphagen, for Mount Vernon High School? Are we considering seriously outdoor classes? Because that is by far the safest zone to be taught in terms of COVID, is outside. Are we doing outside classes?
I haven't seen that model. That's interesting. I think it's something we should explore.
Yeah, at least while the weather's good, before the winter hits, we should be doing it.
That's something that we'll explore.
Trustee Crump, you had a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, somehow or another, I've removed my face and I don't know how to put it back up there yet. So forgive me.
We see you.
Oh, okay, I can't see myself. Sorry about that. All right. So my question in regards to attendance, you mentioned in the presentation, you know, about staff, you know, monitoring the children, but what staff? Because I know that the district has gotten rid of the teacher attendance, the attendance teachers. So can you talk about that in regards to making that move, and why about getting rid of the attendance teachers? And then, so how are we going to monitor the attendance of the students? Because I know prior to pandemic, you know, we had an issue of attendance in the district. So with this, it just creates more of a challenge with the children logging on and being consistent with it, and the structure in the homes to do it.
We're adding increased responsibility to our guidance counselors. We found that the attendance counselors were not as effective as we would like them to be. And there weren't sufficient number of counselors to address some of our issues. And there was a wide array of skill set amongst certain staff members to help remediate some of the attendance issues that we were having, particularly around truancy. So we thought there would be a better approach to make it a more personal, intimate connection with students and their families by having guidance counselors sharing some of those responsibilities. So that's how we've augmented the services that were provided by the 4 attendance teachers and spreading it across our guidance staff responsibilities.
So what's the evaluation tool for the success of that? Because we know that our guidance counselors, you know, already had a great deal of responsibility in a large number of caseloads. And speaking as a parent, you know, who children were in the school system, you know, not too long, just graduated, all of them. You know, there are times where the guidance counselors, because of their caseload, their size, maybe not reaching out to the children, meeting with their children. So to add more responsibility to them, and especially now with the pandemic, it really is an issue to make sure that the children are participating, that they are logging in, that, you know, that they're there.
We've increased our FTEs with counselors. So there are more guidance counselors on our roster now to share in some of that responsibility. And our mechanism is going to ultimately be what our attendance data looks like. Now, right now, it's artificial because we're in a distance learning environment. So our attendance data is very good right now. But once we are back to whatever our new normal will be, we'll look at our data and we'll be able to assess whether or not our truancy rate or our tardiness or absenteeism rates have changed as a result of this new method. That'll be ultimately how we assess if this method is more effective than the prior one.
One of the things that we also spoke about was on those Wednesdays and off days that teachers really reach out and get their kids and work with administration as well and see how we could connect to them. We were very successful, I think, from March to June in certain subgroups like special education, in really making phone calls, texting kids, using remind.com, using Dojo, using different technology tools, reaching out to parents. The parent liaisons played a big role in trying to make sure that kids were doing what they were supposed to do. I read the other day in one of the plans that attendance will look a lot different than it is in the past, because if you're only going 2 days, what does that mean as far as perfect attendance? But it's access to the content and the curriculum, and those units will take care of, hopefully, the needs, the requirements that kids access the contents and the standards and the learning materials, and that will be combined with the physical attendance. So I don't know what, Dr. Hamill, we've talked about attendance versus participation, right? And the way attendance is being defined differently in this type of environment.
Well, we had this discussion very soon after we started distance learning about what does attendance mean. We even looked at the attendance policy and decided it's general enough to cover us. We just got to figure out what it means. So I'm quite going off of what Trustee Crump just said. I'm interested to know, like, what are the lessons we learned specifically about attendance? Like, what is keeping attendance worth anything in a distance learning environment? Is it meaningless? Is it something?
There's a couple of quick
you get from our teachers, and I know you've done lots of research and best practices in other states and even other countries, which we have to do, obviously. But I'm curious to know what is the feedback we got in our district from our teachers about what worked and what didn't work.
A couple of things. So summer school, we are taking attendance in Schoology every day. So there is a mechanism for kids and for us to do it in a digital environment. Well, also our assistant principals are playing a big role in this virtual environment in following up on attendance. So that's another resource for us. What we found, Trustee McCohen, is a wide range of everything. I spoke to different teachers at different levels, and some of them said I got them all. Some of them said I don't have them all, and some of them in between. And we're hoping that the tightness of this next wave factors in. So one of the things that we're really counting on is the extra planning and prep and what that entails. So it's not just filling out a lesson plan, it's the plan on how to engage kids and how to make sure they're coming and where they are. So I don't have all the clear answers on attendance yet, but it's really important that the kids are engaging with what we're putting out.
Any other questions before we, I'm sure this is a conversation that we're going to be continuing over the next several weeks, and it's going to be evolving. But let's take one last question. Trustee Patterson?
No, just in terms of the Wi-Fi and ability to expand what we already have in place. So the two things that, like, I was kind of knocking around in terms of ideas was, one, if we could expand the Wi-Fi in our buildings, as you said, to even at least expand to like sitting areas outside that we could socially distance. So at least in the beginning, if we are not, if we're still trying to figure it out, we have a place where people can go to sit and be able to access our Wi-Fi, and they would use the kids' login and password or whatever. Additionally, there are companies now, and I know NYCHA just put out a big RFP, to bring Wi-Fi into their buildings. There are companies that can set up big units on the top of, let's say, one building in the middle, and it can transmit to other buildings. Again, that would be something that I think we'd have to sit down with the library and the city and have a legit conversation about how we can pool our resources and how we can effectively do that. But that's another option as well.
Great, great. Well, thank you, everybody. This was incredibly mind-blowing and comprehensive. And I guess we're going to be revisiting this. I would, while we don't have a meeting scheduled until August, another meeting scheduled until August, I'm pretty confident that we will need to schedule another meeting in July once we've submitted our plan and gotten some feedback from whoever's in charge, whether it's the governor or the state education department. Yeah. Okay, great.
Well, that concludes the superintendent's report for this evening. It was a long one.
Yeah, it was. Well, we knew it was going to be that way. This is important. This is why we're here. All right, so we're moving on. Oh, committee reports. I think in view of the hour, which is late, we will forego committee reports tonight, but I will, what the trustees will see on the agenda is who is presently or who has been up until this point chairing a particular committee and who the administrative liaison is. And there was an interest on the part of the board several years ago to activate and empower committees to do deep dives. Some of the things that we have talked about tonight, frankly, could be dealt with in a committee basis, and then we can get recommendations from the committee chair and the administration about what the committee thinks. So we're really hopeful that you will, in addition to your homework you have to do for each meeting and your attendance at our various meetings, will consider joining a committee. And I'm going to be revisiting, and I'll share that with all of you. And I'm going to revisit with Dr. Hamilton the committees that we presently have and the efficacy of each committee, because we can end up with a committee for everything. And I think we're going to have to try to consolidate just because of the amount of time and bandwidth that people have. But that's really all we're going to do relative to committees tonight. I would love to have people, lob in an area of interest once they look at what the list of committees are, an area, if there's a particular interest you have, please let me know, and we will be coming forth with some recommendations for committee assignments, as well as adoption of specific schools in a future meeting. Trustee McOwen?
Yeah, I'm fine skipping committee reports tonight. I just wanted, does anyone have any specific events or community announcements that are scheduled for our next meeting that they want to make sure they announce?
Community?
Sure.
Oh, the next meeting is in August?
Well, that's what's scheduled. That's the schedule we're approving tonight, but it's not going to be August. It's going to be July.
So on Sunday, July 19th, tentative at Brush Park. Gonna have this a little session, like a civic engagement, practicing social distancing with our youth, where there are several different stations where they could learn different things and how to protest, what is protesting, why are we protesting, and things of that nature. So just look out for that flyer soon.
That's great. Will that be announced on Facebook? And I guess you could also put that on Rick McCormick could put that on the district site to let.
Definitely. There's a group of us that's been planning it. At first we stopped because the numbers were going up. And now that the numbers are going back down, trying to figure out how we can practice social distancing, but making sure that we get to our elementary school age children.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Super important.
Is Mame still with us? Rick? Is Mame still with us?
There she is.
Yes, she is.
So I just wanted to give, since Mame hasn't
Sorry, my tablet died.
Visibility.
I had to use my phone.
That's okay. Since you haven't had a lot of visibility up until this point in the community, you didn't campaign in the community the way our 3 new trustees did. I thought you might want to just share a few things about yourself for tonight, and then we look forward to hearing from you in the future at future meetings.
Sure. Okay. So I'm a rising senior at Mount Vernon STEAM.
Somebody needs to mute.
Because I'm also in a class. My summer program is going on.
Oh, okay.
Oh. What else should I say to introduce myself? I don't know what else.
If that's all you'd like to say, we know we know one of the schools you're very interested in applying to.
Oh yeah, so I hope to apply to UPenn and double major in biomedical science and Spanish and minor in history. Hopefully go to medical school and become a pediatrician.
And she was unanimously selected by her peers, by the way. I should say that. There was no competition.
We know you'll be a force on the board, Mama, and we really are happy to have you as part of our team going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to the.
I'm sorry.
I have an announcement, another announcement.
Okay.
So Mount Vernon Public Library
That's
is
fine.
partnering with My Brother's Keeper.
Hmm.
And this is Saturday that's coming, which is July, wait, is it this Saturday? No, not this Saturday, sorry. It's July 18th to meet at Mount Vernon Public Library at 9 a.m. And it's a community garden day. And they're partnering with My Brother's Keeper, the Mount Vernon chapter, which I think is led by Brother Muhammad, Arthur Muhammad, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, great.
So bring your soil, wear your boots, and put your gloves on.
That's great. Trustee Patterson, did you have something you needed to say?
No, I was just gonna say that the library event is on the same morning, so that way Trustee Turnquest knew that, you know, if we could schedule them so we could attend both, that would be ideal.
No, mine is on Sunday.
Yeah, one
Oh,
Saturday.
okay. I thought it was
The
on
19th.
Saturday.
18th, one's on the 19th. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Mr. McCormick,
Yes, ma'am.
I guess we are moving on to the consent agenda,
Yes, ma'am.
the second consent agenda. So is there anything that we need to pull?
So Trustee Miller, so these are set up that each department has its own.
Right. So we start with human resources then.
Correct.
Okay, so may I please have a motion to approve the human resources resolutions? That would be 6.1 through 6.2.
Motion to approve.
5.1 I have.
No, well, on mine it says 6.1. I think this was updated.
It's 5 because the way we entered the meeting, there was no opening because we were already here.
Okay, because I still have that as committee reports.
Okay.
Okay, here I got it, 5.1 and 5.2, great. So motion,
Motion to
second,
approve.
Second.
questions, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion's carry. Can I have a motion to approve the business office memorandum, business office resolution?
Motion to approve.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any questions, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Opposed? Abstain? Resolution passes. Motion carries. Motion to approve the school improvement resolutions.
Motion.
Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Takes time to unmute, you know?
Abstain? Motion to approve student services resolution?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Motion to approve buildings and grounds?
Motion.
Did I skip student services?
No, you said
you
that.
Okay, thank you. Motion to approve buildings and grounds resolutions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Finally, a motion to approve the superintendent's resolution, 10.1.
When do I ask a question? I have a question on this.
After we get the motion in the second.
Thank you. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Questions?
Yes. I'm not sure if I see the attachment for the contracts. Remember, I asked that all contracts, the dollar amount
Salary.
was there, and we said that we were going to attach
They've
the
been up
contract previous.
Yeah,
If you refresh the meeting,
see them.
you'll see that they've been attached there.
Okay, I thought I was refreshed because I had the new 5.1, but I'll take your word that is there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I just want to repeat what my request was, is that all contracts going forward, that we have the dollar amount there listed in the contracts. And because these contracts, dollar amounts had not changed, it was suggested that we add the previous contract. But just going forward, if we'll list all contracts, have the dollar amounts, please. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. In the interest of time, we had introduced in this past year a roundtable where we would pick topics that were suggested by the board members to discuss in our public session. I'm going to be soliciting all of you for suggestions, things you would like to discuss in roundtable, which basically is 20 minutes. And we have a topic. You'll be sent the topic in advance, and then we have a chance to discuss it for 20 minutes. So I will be soliciting ideas for roundtable, and hopefully we'll have some really substantive discussions going forward when it's not, almost 10:30 at night.
I'm sorry.
Trustee Madison?
President Miller, can I just really quickly, because earlier when we had the presentation about, school reopening and everything, I had two little ones running around arguing about movie choices and whatnot. So I didn't have the chance to say what I wanted to say. So I just wanted to really give, I want to give the district and obviously administration, and on my camera, I'm right in between Gorman and Hamilton. So this kind of works out well. I don't know where I am on yours, but I want to give them such a fantastic shout out, and the teachers and everybody and the administrators. And it has been, and again, my joke about him having the worst teacher ever was absolutely just for everyone on the same page, that I meant me. Because this poor kid had to learn, we had to go like practice reading with me, who the other day, I think I had posted something about a strong A. I didn't know there was such a thing as a strong A or a weak A or any of that stuff. So I think as it stands, and again, I do enjoy the summer school. And as I said, I'm enjoying the summer school a lot more because I think he's getting, that kind of attention that I really think all of our kids, desperately need. But the fact of the matter is you guys have done a fantastic job. And if I haven't said it because of everything going on and our budget issues and arguing about whatever else is coming up, I just wanted to be really clear, because I think it's really important that we take a minute and just stop and really thank you guys, because without you guys I don't know, whatever, it'd be horrible.
Thank you for that. And that what the summer program is more like what the synchronized is more akin to what the synchronized program should look like. So we really are essentially piloting it now. So I'm glad to get that parent perspective. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
In that case, all nonsense aside, it is fantastic. I cannot tell you what a comfort it is to have, and again, I know it's hard, and I hear my son's teacher constantly being like, okay, guys, because they all get excited and then they're all talking at the same time. And it's kind of like what we sound like sometimes. But the fact of the matter is it's amazing. And the administrators pop on and they're saying hello to the kids and the kids are like, oh, so it's really, again, just a positive all around. I can't say enough good things.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Great.
Trustee Miller, please, before you move forward, your facial expression. The contract is on the trustee side. It needs to be on the public side so that the public can see it. That's why I didn't see it, because I was checking on the public side. It's not listed on the.
I see it on the public side. Yeah, I see it on the public side.
It's on the public?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it there.
Okay, I didn't see it. For some reason, I don't see it. All right, as long as it's there.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, we had I have a chat request from Trustee Forson. Mame?
Yeah, so I asked a few students about how they felt about the end of last year and how they're feeling about this year. So it was mostly seniors, but I just want to read a few things out so you can see how the students felt, not just parents and adults.
Great.
So most kids said that they kind of felt on and off about it, because on the one hand, they didn't have to wake up so early. They had more time to study for APs. But on the other hand, it was inconvenient. Science classes were cut short. Like my biomedical science class, we couldn't do half of the experiments because everything's supposed to be done in class, and it's nearly impossible to do it online. Some classes like math, it's very difficult to learn math on Zoom compared to in class, asking the teacher. What else? Some kids felt that it wasn't, they felt that they weren't well prepared for the transition from at school to in-home learning, because they felt like there was difficulty with executing the lessons because some teachers weren't used to Zoom. So they felt like the teachers were overwhelmed. So even though some teachers were able to just easily transition to online learning with the laptop, some of them just did not know what to do. So for a couple of weeks on end, we had some no work in some classes because they were trying to figure out how to work things. In the beginning, there was an abundance of work, but as we started to go on and teachers started to hear our concerns, they began to slow down the work. So we appreciated that. But overall, we were pretty happy with how things ended up, because even though school got a little bit more difficult, towards the end of the year, it's junior year is supposed to be the most stressful year, and it wasn't as stressful as we thought it would be. We were happy at the break, and then we were kind of mad that it kept on going because we wanted to go back to school. But in the end, it was better than we expected. So as the seniors as a whole, we wanted to commend the teachers and the school board for being able to transition well enough into online learning. Our concern for the coming year is our schedules, because most of the kids in my AP class, we have all of our credits. I have, I think 24 credits or something like that. Was that to me?
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, keep going.
I have all my credits from this year. So technically I could have graduated this year, but next year I have 5 AP classes. And if I'm accepted to college early, I wouldn't need those classes. And I also feel like we should be able to modify our schedules, because some of the classes I'd rather take because they'd be better for my major that I'll be taking in college, but I'm forced to take a certain class because it's a core class or something like that. So we feel like we should have more of a say in our schedule. That's it.
You actually, if you remember, the advisory council brought that up before, particularly for those seniors who had pretty much satisfied all their requirements. So I think that's something we should definitely talk about and work, talk to guidance counselors about, and talk to Dr. Smith, who supervises the guidance counselors. I think that's a great observation again, and thank you for bringing that back up.
Thank you, Trustee Forson. I'm really happy that you're advocating for your fellow students.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
We look forward to hearing what they think about the new upcoming plans.
Exactly. So do we want to, Trustee Mitchell.
I just had one question regarding the round. I was talking about the roundtable. Will we be able to suggest topics as trustees?
Yes, the roundtable is totally trustee driven.
Okay.
And so the trustees need to nominate the topics. I mean, they have to be topics that we can have in public session, but we can't do specific teachers or whatever. But yes, so it's all trustee driven, and I want all of you to decide what you'd like to talk about, and we'll try to rotate. Make sure everybody gets a chance to suggest a topic. And frankly, I think if everybody sends in a list, you could send them to Rick McCormick or send them to me. But if you send in a list of the top 5 things you'd like to discuss as a group in public session, then we'll probably find some that match up, and we'll prioritize those first. But yes, it's totally trustee driven.
Top 5 African American history taught all year round.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Good.
Equity in schools, I guess. That would be equity in schools. That's a good one.
All right. Well, let's
I think equity in school kind of water it down. I think you gotta be specific, because somebody say that looks something totally different from one person to another person. You gotta be specific.
Yeah.
Like the brother said.
Yeah,
African American.
Yeah,
taught
distributing the
in
equity
school
properly.
Yeah. Yeah. Equity could mean all kind of stuff. It's too vague.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll take the suggestions, we'll refine them as a group, and we'll discuss them at our next meeting. And then we'll move forward based on what you all want to do. Trustee McGowan?
In terms of roundtable, I think we should calendar and schedule over the course of the year regular check-ins on our 2020 and beyond goals. Just pick one every 3 meetings or something, and just let's focus on it and see how we're doing. Because I don't want to go a whole year and then end up, we didn't talk about it,
Absolutely. And to that point, I'm glad you raised that, because tonight, to all the trustees, Rick McCormick did email you a list of our goals and an explanation of our goals beyond 2020 goals. So that should be in your inbox. All your inboxes. If you don't receive it, you can just email Rick and let him know. And additionally, I wanted to thank everybody for their forbearance, because we deal in acronyms like all over the place. And it's very hard to know what people are talking about when they use the abbreviations and the acronyms for different programs. So to that end, Rick has also sent you, it's called board language, school board language alphabet or something, school board alphabet. So it'll list all the different acronyms that we use, and you can become familiar with them, and we'll try to be mindful of explaining them in the first few meetings, but you will have a kind of a cheat sheet, a list of all the different things that we use, the shorthand that we use in the school district. So to that end, how about a motion to adjourn?
No, sorry, I got 2 other things. I'll be quick. I'll be quick. The first was, I'm apparently getting called out on Facebook for my comment about the Wi-Fi earlier. Let me try and clarify what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say is, I'm concerned that if we start providing Wi-Fi for the whole city, as opposed to just student families and just teachers, that I know there are a lot of technology issues that come with that, and I'm concerned about bandwidth. What I was trying to say is, What I don't want to have be the situation is that we get put in a situation where our students can't learn and the Zoom meetings aren't working, the teacher presentations aren't working because the bandwidth is getting clogged up by other people not in the district, not using district resources to use up that Wi-Fi bandwidth. That's what I was trying to say, because I know that's an issue when you try and do these citywide Wi-Fi projects. That it's one thing to say, oh, we'll just give everybody Wi-Fi, but if the Wi-Fi is so crappy that no one can use it, that's not helpful.
Not at all.
So it's not helpful. So I'm all for anything we can do as a district to get Wi-Fi into everybody's houses. I'm 1,000% behind that. I'm 1,000% behind it. We should do it. We should do it, and not just during school hours. It should be 24/7. I just want to make sure that whatever mechanism or program we're looking into, we can do it in a way that ensures that students can actually use it for what it's for, that they can use it to take advantage of those resources, and we don't do it in some kind of blanket way that ends up diluting it and making it not usable. That's all I was trying to say, because I've seen citywide Wi-Fi projects do this, and it ends up just kind of being really expensive, and then for the city or for the district, and then it doesn't really work anyway. That's what New York City's been going through when they're trying to do the same type of thing. And I want to make sure we don't repeat those mistakes. That's all I was trying to say.
I think it was, I don't see him on here, but there was an individual on here that spoke about, maybe it was Patterson, but about what's happening with Spectrum. See, Spectrum said that they were only going to give Wi-Fi for a certain amount of time because they thought that COVID was going to end and we were going to go back to school. So what we experienced, because I'm in New York City Department of Education, we experienced one day where nobody were in Google Classroom because Spectrum cut it off.
Right.
Right. And so that is like one of the issues when you have places like Verizon and Spectrum and things of that nature saying that they're going to provide, which I think they should provide the students, the little small hotspot and everything in order for them to be in the race. And then they only provide it for a certain amount of time and they cut it off. It's just like a lot of the online, all of the Scholastic, everybody was offering everything for free.
Right.
But 48 laws of power, don't trust anything that's for free, right? And so, and then, cut off. I see y'all later. Bye, we're out of here. So, when it comes to the Wi-Fi thing, I don't know.
It's a reality. Listen, we cannot do our district. We can't do our jobs if the kids don't have Wi-Fi. We can't do it.
Right.
Have Wi-Fi. I know they absolutely have to have it.
Definitely.
So I'm hopeful that we can do some kind of partnership or something, either with the city or with these providers, to make something happen permanently for families. Because I think making a partnership with the providers for something permanent is way more efficient than us as a school district trying to independently ourselves provide Wi-Fi for everybody.
Well,
I agree. And I
Dr.
think,
Hamilton, go ahead.
And I agree. I think in thinking moving forward, I think we should really concentrate on figuring out a way to give the students every possible thing they need in order to succeed in life. So, that's what I really want to focus on going through this year and all the years after this, because every student has to have a laptop. Every student has to have internet. It just, goes without saying.
It has to happen. It has to happen. Every family has to have it, or it doesn't. None of this works without it. They have to have it. Second thing, which has nothing to do with this. I think we should have meetings in person, assuming that the governor is not stopping us. And my understanding is, and I don't want it to be mandatory. I think anybody who wants to continue doing Zoom meetings should continue to do them. But I don't think it's a good look for us. I got to be honest, when we're telling our employees to show up to work. Dr. Hamilton is sitting in the Board of Ed right now, and none of us are. So I volunteer. I would be happy to wear a mask and go be in the Board of Ed meetings if anyone wants to join me. I'm just putting that out there. I think it's not, I think we should be where we're asking our employees to be and show that confidence. And I also think that if people want to make a public comment themselves and not have Rick read it, I think we should figure out a way for people to be able to do that.
Yes, I agree.
recording a video and emailing it in, or they're standing outside of the building at a microphone or something. I think
And it's always better face to
that
face.
opportunity,
Always.
as long as we're not under order to.
Yeah.
Well, so Mr. McCormick, I think our goal would be for our next meeting, which I think we'll be talking tomorrow. I'll talk with you and Dr. Hamilton about when that will be, but I think we should go for in person, whether we have to do it at homes, you know, in the cafeteria for the amount of space we need or what have you.
Sure.
We should look at doing that for our next meeting, and to was it Micah's point, you know, anyone who feels uncomfortable or unwell or physically compromised can always dial in, but there's nothing beats being in the same room. So that's a great point.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'm with Mike. I'll go.
All right.
Just don't get near me, okay? You watch it.
No, and using one of the buildings with an auditorium or a stage is a really good idea. That makes sense.
That was Rick McCormick suggests that. Okay, great, folks. Well, this has been very long, but incredibly comprehensive and quite an indoctrination for our new members. So I appreciate everyone's patience and participation. It's been really great, very informative, and I would like a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mount Vernon, for watching.
Good night,
Thank
all.
you, Mount Vernon.
Aye.
Thank
Next
you.
time.
Bye-bye.